Good morning, guys. Wanted to do on this day for you today. On this day in history, Lyndon B. Johnson, or LBJ, sends federal troops to protect Civil Rights March in 1965. So I know we've talked about the Civil Rights Movement a little bit off and on about Dr. Martin Luther King and his work and other civil rights activists. So this is just one that's a little bit longer, but I wanted to make sure we spend some time talking about this because I think this stuff is important and it's not always talked about a bunch. So President Lyndon B. Johnson on this day in history notifies Alabama Governor George Wallace that he will use federal authority to call up the Alabama National Guard. I have a typo there, sorry. He was calling them to supervise a planned civil rights march from Selma to Montgomery, which is maybe one of the most famous marches to have ever happened, and we'll get back to that in a second. But so kind of what created this situation, lots of intimidation and discrimination had earlier prevented Selma's Black population, which Selma is a city in Alabama, and about half of their population at the time was Black, and they were the white people in Selma were intimidating and discriminating Black folks, and were not letting them register to vote, which was really important because that's how they were seeking change. They were seeking change legally, and that it wasn't, they needed to register to vote in order to be able to vote, and that wasn't happening. So on March 7th, 1965, just about a week or almost 2 weeks before this day in history, 600 demonstrators marched on the capital city to protest. They were met not well. The state and local police actually attacked marchers with billy clubs and tear gas, which is not okay. I also have the First Amendment pulled up, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So then because of this, another march took place led by Dr. King, Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Doctor. And that was just about 2 days after the 7th, so March 9th or so, 1965. So then a third march was scheduled. And what I need you to understand is that in your First Amendment rights, okay, I have it pulled up on this tab here, okay, in your First Amendment rights, and the amendment is right up over here. Goodness, come on, mouse. Here we go. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble in the petition of the government for a redress of grievances. So what that all means, kids, is people have the right to peacefully protest. You, as an American citizen, have the right to peacefully protest. And in this setting, in Alabama, they were not being given that fair opportunity addressed in their amendments, in their rights. So, March 18th, a federal judge, remember, federal refers to like the big dogs in government. That would be the president, Congress, and the Supreme Court, where we also have most of those things in our local government. So, for example, our governing body would be in Sacramento, and like Governor Newsom is the one kind of in charge of things in only California. He doesn't have any legal ability elsewhere. Okay, so Lyndon B. Johnson and his advisors worked quickly after this federal ruling to ensure the safety of Dr. King and his demonstrators on their way from Selma to Montgomery. And then I even have another slide today, kids. It's real long today. And then the most powerful obstacle in their way was this Governor Wallace guy, the governor of Alabama. He was an outspoken segregationist. Segregation, hopefully, means that that idea of separate but equal, even though things weren't equal, and he believed in that. He believed in having black and white separate. So he was reluctant to spend any funds on on protecting these demonstrators. Oh, it got a little heated between the president and the governor, and Wallace would not use the Alabama National Guard, which each state has a National Guard that's supposed to kind of help them when in their time of need. So, for example, the California National Guard could be called out if things get any crazier here, which it's going to be okay here. So instead, he called on Lyndon B. Johnson to use federal troops, which is a little weird because it's a state issue. Lyndon B. Johnson had a press release issued stating that Wallace refused to use the 10,000 available guardsmen to preserve order in his state, and therefore Johnson had to himself call upon these National Guardsmen and sent federal troops down, giving the necessary support to these peaceful protesters. So several days later, in March 1965, 50,000 marchers followed Dr. King and other civil rights leaders on the 54-mile march from Selma to Montgomery, under the watchful eye of both state and federal troops. So make sure that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. I will see most of you in a few minutes on our Zoom meeting. If you're watching this later in the day, great. I'm not going to push anything out today in either class, and I will make sure I have something up on Google Classroom that says that, and we'll kind of pick up again next week. Oh my gosh, Mrs. So have a good one. I will see you later. Oh my gosh, this text won't go away.